Welcome to the Rich Life Projects. Today, we've got a legend in the studio with us today. And firstly, I'd like to thank Stu Laundy and the boys from Laundy Hotels for sponsoring this episode 7. And my special guest, and man, we got a lot to get through today, Glenn Gorick. Welcome to the Rich Life Project. Thank you, mate, for turning up, and it's great to have you in the studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rich. I'm very honoured to be here. It's been a journey from Sydney this morning, can I tell you that?
100%, mate. The old flight in and flight out. They're not like they used to be, are they?
No. It was packed, mate. It was busy. But Qantas got it right all the way.
Oh,
they never missed a beat.
Little plug there, mate, for the old life member.
That's right.
Not bad. What's been happening in Glenn Gorick's life, my friend?
It never stops, Rich.
I know that. There's a lot of subjects to cover today.
I know. I can imagine, mate. I know you've probably been stalking me and Googling me and all those sorts of things. And I've seen some pop-ups on my mobile phone here when Rich is having a look.
So, 100%, mate. 100%. I've got to have a look at all sorts of things happening when it comes to you, my friend. So what's been happening just recently? Anything exciting, and What's the life of Glenn Gorick at the moment?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed bag.
Yep.
Still doing a little bit of charity work. Still hooking up with my visually impaired athlete.
Yep.
Or he's my mate, Nathan, and we had a trot in the city to surf just recently, so that was a bit of fun. And then 2 weeks before that in the Sutherland to surf, which is New South Wales' second biggest fun run. So we trotted down to the Cronulla beach, and then we also trotted down to the beautiful Bondi beach.
Oh, beautiful beaches, aren't they?
They are, mate. Well, Stu Laundy hangs out in Bondi Beach, mate. He's.
I think that's the only place he hangs out, isn't it?
It is, yeah. No, he's a good man, mate. Just on Stu. Big thank you to him, mate, for sponsoring this. He's a very generous man, as you know. He does so much for charity behind the scenes, and he's humble. Definitely. Never sticks his head into it, but he's always, opening that wallet, and he's a fantastic guy. Very generous.
No, I fully agree, mate. He's a great man and does some great stuff with his in the community. So, professional athlete, successful businessman, New South Wales Police Sergeant, and NRL, the Cronulla Sutherland Sharkies, the director, one of the most sort of identified celebrities, I could say, in the Shire.
Talk it up.
and a car racing or enthusiasm. So, mate, going back, let's go right back, because obviously there's a lot of subjects, and your life is probably the most busiest life I've ever come across. Back in the early days growing up, obviously your father, Robert, who was one of the so-called NRL stalwarts, they say, what was, obviously being around the NRL from such a young age, just talk a little bit about your father in regards to him being classed as one of the NRL stalwarts, because obviously it would have been back in the day when rugby league was a very tough sport, and yet, they had to go to work and then they had to play. Not like these days, obviously, but...
Totally different. Look, Dad, my late father, he was really hooked on rugby league from a very young age, and later in life obviously became an administrator, and he was recognised for that. So he was a big part of Sharks for 40 years. He was the junior and the senior president down there, spent a bit of time running for the board like me, and he was always doing all the junior rosters right across the whole of the Sutherland Shire and a lot of the NRL stuff. Yep. He was doing the rosters for all the juniors, and he'd get up on a Saturday, or probably start Friday night, and do it all through the night until he'd go and leave Saturday morning, and then he'd go out and mark fields and organise referees. Right back in, this is the 60s we're talking about. Junior league was played the same as senior league. Wow. So, we were, as kids, were dragged off with mum and dad to these matches, and of course the minute I turned 7, I'm stuck straight into the old Como Junior Rugby League Football Club, and we had a full complemented 7A team, and we won the premiership, and Dad was pushing that with coaching as well. And then I went 8s, 9s, 10s, then I had a break for a while and came back at 14, 15s, played school league. So my father was involved in all of those processes and that part of our lives.
Yeah, yeah.
And right back, and I'm going back to under sevens is 1968.
Yeah.
That's how long I've been involved in sport.
Wow, that's incredible journey there. Incredible journey.
And we were premiers 3. We were the only Shire juniors team that won 3 premierships in a row. So,
really?
Yeah. So right back then, things were starting to evolve where I like to do my best at sport.
Yeah.
And that was instilled in me from that point on.
Yeah, right. Amazing. So in your early days, obviously you had rugby league, you've had cricket, swimming, athletics, cross country. Where when the rugby league sort of part, where did it take over from wanting to be obviously a rugby league player and then getting into triathlons? Because that's obviously you're a professional triathlete. Where did that change? What was the part of change for that?
Life takes you on strange turns.
Amen to that one.
It does, and injuries also take you on other turns. So, I was playing representative football with the police force. So we had like a shadow comp to the first grade NRL comp, and we'd play for the same team. So I was playing at that stage for St George, and then we moved over to Bankstown. And around 1986, I was injured by one of my own players in a tackle.
Oh, really?
That's always the way.
Yep.
Going hard in on the tackles, took out my medial ligament and did that. And then I had that fixed, and not long after that, I also aggravated it on a motorbike incident as well. So I was right into the running at that stage, and I was contemplating going back to an athletic sport. And that was the decision that I made when I was hurt like that, and I was 6 weeks. I couldn't run, couldn't swim. I was on crutches. That whole setup was a real mess, and I decided, then I'm not going to play that sport anymore. It's too brutal, and I really respect the level of the brutalness of it.
Yep.
You know, they're seeing it nowadays. It's so fast, and they wear no padding. We had headgear and padding on.
The old shoulder pads.
Shoulder pads, yeah. You're 6 foot, but you look 6 foot wide as well. And nowadays they're built like they're with shoulder pads. These guys, it's full time, And I never played league at a professional level. Obviously, I did get an offer for a grading down at Sharks when I was for the under 23. So I went down and trialled and didn't do any good. There's just so much talent around, and again, my heart wasn't in it after I'd been injured, and I was looking for other sports. I'd moved right away from motorsport at that stage as well. I joined the cops. There was lots going on in my life. It was a whole new world for a young man, a 23-year-old man. You know, so.
And that's when you joined the police force, when you're 23?
Yeah, I joined at 23.
Yep.
I was a late starter. I was an electrician before that. I spent 7 years, with TAFE and study and doing some extensions on the TAFE courses because I was employed by the Australian Atomic Energy Commission, the only nuclear reactor in Australia. Oh, wow. And certainly learnt all about renewables and nuclear power back in those days, and carbon fibre even, those sorts of things. So we were very privileged to work there, and we were given such a great start in life as a 17-year-old and to go on to other things where those qualifications I still use to this day. Yeah,
beautiful. And then you go, so you triathlete, you're working, obviously you're in the police force, but at the same time you're doing triathlons. You've done thousands of triathlons over the time. Well, probably millions, who knows.
Talk it up again, but yeah.
But, like some of you got such great accolades and respect from other athletes, and not only just in triathlons, just in general of sportsmen that I have talked to over the last probably couple of months myself, and they mention your name, and they're sort of really respectful of what you've achieved in triathlons as well.
It's interesting, Rich. The triathlon it's a lifestyle. Yeah. So after you move away from trying to win everything, you move into the family side of it, and you get involved with your club, and you get to do that side, and then the age groups start and so on. So it's a wonderful sport like that. Where other sports, all my professional mates in sports, when there's a lot of them from different walks of life, we've met through various either charitable organisations, or we've met through a sportsman's lunch, or maybe we've just through running into each other. Like I've met mates at nightclubs that are still lifelong friends from sport, because on Sundays afterwards and Mondays we were all training together. And the difference with them, a lot of them ended up stopping sport and then not having anything to go to and struggling psychologically, where triathlon allows you to keep that continuing on. And it's one of those few sports, there's guys that are 80 that are still doing it and doing it well and beating 30-year-olds. Alf Larkin up in the Gold Coast and the old late Bobby Southwell, these guys were all doing it in their late 50s, 60s and 70s and beating half the field of the young guys. They were incredible athletes.
Those are the guys you want to sit down with and say, what's the mindset? That's because I'm obviously fascinated with the mindset, but yeah, just going through those thousands of multi-sport, even with the triathlons and so forth, the swimming, the running, the bike riding. What was the training for that? Obviously, I've done I think I've done one triathlon, and it was a team event. I ain't done the run.
All right.
But when you're doing the whole three, I suppose in some ways it's like MMA, where you've got to do a lot of disciplines to come to having a full acquired tools in your sack. But what's when you're doing triathlons? What's all that with mindset going forward in that?
Mate, you've really nailed that. MMA. Well, I don't like to make comparisons with sports because they're all uniquely different, and sportsmen. I've always been, always get, very careful and guarded over making comparisons, especially with individuals, because there's so many guys that are so much better and you can't compare with them. But MMA, you probably nailed that, like kickboxing, boxing, running, jogging, all the disciplines, all the other alternate fitness levels where you get through the gym and sit-ups and push-ups and all that stuff you have to do. Then the mental resilience to know you get a good kick in the head and you're laying on the canvas, you're going to get back up. Right? So triathlon, there'd be similar traits with that where, swimming, it's not just swimming. You're doing a transition to a bike. So there's a whole component of just training for that one little window of 2 minutes to get it into such a form of a habit that you repeat it identically every time, so you don't get penalised. You're clipping your helmet off and one hand's pulling a shoe on. There's so many different things you're doing, and when you're converting off the bike onto the run, you're coming in and you're trying to balance one foot off the bike and undo your shoes and then step over the line at probably 20 kilometres an hour sometimes and then run with the bike so you don't lose any time, get to the rack.
Momentum, times, everything.
Then running shoes on and then coming up at the same time and unclipping a helmet, then going out on a run leg. And you've gone from swimming where you're probably pushing, as a young man, 220 beats per minute in your heart. Swimming for anywhere between 750k up to maybe a 4k, a 3.8 Ironman swim. Everything is flat out pretty much for the professional triathlete. There's no just having a rest here or there. And then you're transitioning to the bike and your heart rate's dropping. It comes down a lot on that unless it's a really hilly course. You're in a time trial mode, so it's an individual event, except for some of that's changed a little bit with the draft legal races, but certainly you're in this time trial position, so technology's now playing a role, like you would do with your boxing boots and your gloves, and your padding and so on, and then you're transitioning to that run leg and the heart rate's back up again. And you might have someone you're trying to run down as well. So you're pushing beyond the limits.
Facets in there, isn't it?
It's huge, and especially at the elite level. You call me a professional athlete. For me, we were in the era where you had a job, you left the job, you tried to do what you could, but you always had something to fall back on. We made good money out of it. I was very lucky, and probably a lot more fortunate than a lot of guys who were a lot better than me. I was just lucky that I had a really good mate. He's passed away, Mark Pringle. Mark was Mr. Triathlon in Australia. He was the first true professional, went over to America and raced in the Bud Light Series in the mid-'80s, came back here and he hooked up with Carlton United and Foster's. And one of my friends said, Pring's got a couple of spots, he wants to have a look at you. So I went in and was interviewed with Brian Roma, who was on the board at the time. And that led really to a very good, reasonable income back then, outside of just trying to get whatever prize money you could. And then the Carlton United thing would go through winter. We'd go over and do all the Asia Pacific races, and there was a team of us, and it included some outstanding, really, truly elite athletes like Greg Welsh and Brad Bevan.
Yeah, Greg Welsh is a name that really got some frontline media, I believe, because even years ago when I was growing up, and triathlon obviously wasn't frontline media, but his name come up a lot. And
he was. I remember going away with Greg a lot, and we were up in the Gold Coast for the World Cup, and Greg was walking along the motel rooms. It was myself and a couple of other mates, and Mal Meninga, Wally Lewis, and Laurie Daly were walking together or chatting, and they saw Greg and identified him straight away.
Wow,
this is before triathlon was real big, and Greg hadn't won Hawaii. We were just up for the 1989 World Cup, and they wanted to get to know him and find out who he was. And they, you're Greg Welsh, so Greg really stamped his authority on the world of triathlon very early, and went on to win the Hawaiian Ironman. He was incredible, and he's just the nicest bloke you'd ever meet as well. Yeah. He's so humble. He's over in America now.
Is he living over there?
Lives in America. His kids are in uni, and I speak to Greg weekly. We still have it.
Amazing.
Greg was in my training group. Like I say, there was all these guys who were so good, but I was so privileged to train with them. Like I had in my training group was the great Michael Moroney. You might have heard Hoppo's just done a podcast on him.
I did.
Incredible bloke, mate. And what Michael has done, Dr. Michael Moroney, incredible. And he's still going, winning races and getting in the top 10, and he's 55 and he's got 5 kids.
That's amazing.
Incredible. Well, he was in the training group, and Mick, we all aspired to be like Mick. And we actually aspired to be better than Mick, because you can't just be like someone else. You've got to, you can't emulate someone else. You've got to go and be better than them. And so every training session was grit and hard, and there was Greg, Mick, Rick Pallister, Tony Unicum, the Southall brothers. These were a very elite group of people in triathlon, and we were all living in the Shire and we were all training together.
Yeah, wow.
We're very lucky. And McKillie Jones. McKillie come train with the men. That was all part of the group.
Wow, that
incredible.
That would have been a bit of a change for the, where it is now with women and men sort of competing at the same levels now, rugby league, AFL, whatever. But that would have been a bit of a sort of benchmark, icebreaker too, in regards to the woman then going into train, especially with the men.
Absolutely. McKillie was just a mover and a shaker. She would give it to you in training, and she'd come and ride the early morning 4:30 a.m. rides. She'd sit there at 50k and 55k an hour. It became so competitive within the training. There was 2 big sessions that I always used to look forward to. One was the Wednesday afternoon National Park time trial. We'd go up and do it ourselves on a Wednesday afternoon. We'd swim 3-4 kilometres in a session. We'd then go and ride 42 kilometres in. It's like going up in the Dandenongs. It's extremely steep hills. Mike Moroney used to ride that in under an hour. He averaged at 42 kilometres an hour in hills like that. Wow. And we'd all try and break the hour. That was our benchmark to get. And we'd get close. I think I got down to 102. And this is on a Wednesday afternoon after a swimming session. So the other triathletes around the country, the Miles Stewarts and the Brad Bevans, all started to wonder what these guys in the Shire are doing, and they started coming down to Sutherland Shire and training with us. Yeah. And Brad Bevan, one morning, I remember we did the other event, or the other training session I wanted to touch on, and that was the morning pack ride, which would go from Caringbah into Botany and around the airport and back to Caringbah. And it was, the same thing. It was an hour at 55k an hour. And it was mental. It was like a tour pack ride, and these guys were pushed the boundaries until everyone just got spat off the back of it.
That's pretty amazing, having that group of those which in the future, which no one ever seen, but had world-class triathlon. Greg Welsh and names, the Southwell brothers and yourself, that sort of went and done triathlete or Ironman at that world level. And you guys were pretty much the benchmark of Australia in regards to the whole, just your small little group was the team basically.
Correct. And the Cronulla Triathlon Club, the world famous Cronulla Triathlon Club, it is world famous. It's known all over the world in all the other triathlon clubs, because it produced the first Australian to break the American stranglehold on the Hawaiian Ironman, which was Greg Welsh. He went over and beat everyone in 94. First time a non-American had won it. Greg was a 4-time world champion in 4 different distances. comes from Cronulla Tri Club. Then you've got Mike Moroney winning everything in Australia, just about. Mike was winning Noosa and Port Macquarie and National Park, and the rest of us were all finishing in the top 10. We were all, the Cronulla group was so powerful to the point we produced the 4 or 6 world champions, outright world champions now. So we've got 5 men and 1 female, which is McKeely. This is all from this training group. Chris McCormack,
just from that training group.
Craig Alexander, just from this one group, has produced these elite athletes on the world stage. And in the age groups, we also have our really elite athletes, a true professional. Jason Metters come back and won a world championship at 40. He was red hot. Jason was in that training group, and Jason was just a killer swimmer and rider, and he was a good runner too, but just not on that edge of the others. But he'd hang in there, and he'd always place in races. He went overseas and he won races in France and all over the place. Gets married, has a couple of kids. Gets very lucky meeting a sponsor over in Namibia when we used to go over to do a race in the sun, and he took him all over the place and sponsored him with Mobil Oil, and then they ended up in Dubai, and Jason's coaching the Saudis or whoever it is over there. He coaches the police teams, the Olympic teams, and he's made a real career out of triathlon, out of that training group from Cronulla. Incredible stories, And
is that at present is that still going strong? The Cronulla sort of triathlon or Ironman
It sure
team?
is, mate.
Really? Wow.
Just on Sunday, I went up and did a duathlon with them, a handicap duathlon. That's a ride-run event. It's only short. It's 2 1-kilometre sprints, laps, so 2K run, 6 laps on the bike, so I'd say about 8K ride, and then a 1K sprint finish, and it's a killer. And I can't say the words here, but the people who organised it,
you can say whatever words
I was
you
going
want,
to say
brother.
the pricks who handicapped me, put me off nearly last every time, and I'm 60 years of age now, so it hurt. But the competitiveness is still there. We're still producing, like Craig Alexander's still at 45, still going around winning races, still racing, still coaching. We have a hell of a lot of juniors now, the Woolridge brothers, others that have come through the ranks. Our junior program's massive in Cronulla Triathlon Club. The Galea, the family, Mark and Erica, have really implemented this huge training program for juniors, and they've all been, they're all getting selected for junior trials now, which is world class level stuff, and they'll all be off to the Com Games and Olympics, all out of Cronulla.
That's incredible for one team. No wonder it's massive in the Cronulla then.
Something
Cronulla
in the
area.
water, mate, or the Sandhills, or the National Park rides,
but Cronulla Shire. Every time you hear of Cronulla Shire and Maroubra area, it's always got strong sportsmen and strong businessmen. And I've never lived in any of those shires, but it's one thing that I always hear. Every now and again, you'll hear from Cronulla Shire or from the Maroubra area, whatever it may be. But it's
oh yeah, mate. Maroubra's produced some hardcore athletes as well. I mean, look at Davey Warner in the cricket. And Candice, his wife, she was a great Ironwoman. They're the products of those areas. And I
never knew what she actually done. I never really paid attention.
Ironwoman, bloody good one too.
Really,
really good one, and really a hard worker. And at that stage of my life, Rick Pallister was doing the Ironman, and we would go and watch or handle for him, and Rick had converted over from triathlon, left the cops like the rest of us, and we were all trying to make money out of these sports, and Rick went up to the Gold Coast and went really well, and at the same time the Ironwoman series was starting to really gain some traction, and Candice came into that around, I think it was around 98, and she absolutely smashed it, and so Davey, one of what their kids will be like.
Oh mate, well I got sort of one of the Maroubra legends on next week with Richie Vass.
Oh yeah,
so I've got him coming in.
He'll know more goss than me then.
Well, you probably know exactly the same amount of goss in that area. Yeah. So you're still competing in some events locally in the Shire. The podium finishes obviously are endless. You wouldn't even be able to name all the podium finishes off the top of your head, which is understandable when you've done hundreds. Tell me with the two, obviously the pinnacle in Ironman racing or Iron women racing is the Hawaiian Ironman. How long is that race, and what was the experience like for you when you got to that point? Obviously, pinching yourself, going, "Wow, I'm in the Hawaiian Ironman," which is the pinnacle of all Ironman. I take it. What was that like for you?
Right, so the Hawaiian Ironman, just for the listeners, it's really important to know, that started in 1978.
Oh, that long ago.
Yeah, that long ago. And on the island of Hawaii, Oahu, not Kona, where it is now.
Yep.
And it pretty much became the world championship long distance race in its infancy days. Only about 12 did it first up. Yep. Then it just grew. And Ironman really wasn't here in Australia, until 1985. There was tri-marathons and 981 up at Allura Beach, which was a long race. But this Ironman concept really got put on the map, and well before Surf Ironman and all that sort of stuff, when Jan Wanklin the Australian woman, crawled across the line in 83, I think it was, and it was telecast all around the world. And I remember Max Walker on Whitewater Sports and Mike Gibson carrying on about it and watching that. And they used to then, from that point on, do a full day's coverage on the Ironman and watching. And then in 1987 or 88, there was a big contingent of Australians that went over there after they qualified here in the Australian Ironman, the first one at Foster. And then they went over and did the race. And Channel 7, Warwick Sims, at the time, he was also doing triathlons. Warwick was the sports reporter. He went over with a Channel 7 crew and they telecast it. So all of a sudden, people sitting in the lounge rooms are going, well, look at this. I want to do that. Yeah. So it became the hardest one-day sporting event in the world, and still to this day is. It's considered the hardest one day. So a 3.8 swim in this really rancid, salty water with volcanic ash all in it. It's pretty sulfur smell everywhere. So even in the swim, no wetsuits allowed because of the temperature. The water's 28 degrees. Okay. But it's rough, it's choppy. People get seasick in it because of the swells swimming over that length.
I definitely would then.
Yeah, that's what you don't realise, do you? You're swimming, but you're going up and down.
I can't even go in the boat. I took Bam out on a boat one time at Swansea, and I was sick off that.
Well, you got to keep moving. That's the trick, Rich. If you stop, it kills you.
Wow. So 3.8 kilometres into swim.
Yep.
Then we swim, then we bike ride, and then run.
Yeah, so 3.8K would be like swimming across the heads of Melbourne Bay, from Geelong across to Mornington or something like that. And then you'd probably hop on your bike and you'd ride from Mornington round to Geelong. That's a long way, as you know.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So,
wow.
For us, it's like riding from Cronulla to Newcastle for the Sydney listeners. And
you only walk that.
Yeah. You did too, mate.
Oh man,
with your knees, I don't know how you did
3 days. That's 3 days of memories.
Cruel, brutal. We'll get on to that later, but just back on the bike. So they in Hawaii, to make it harder, they used to ride out this place called Harvey, and in the year I did it with the visually impaired athlete, going up there, you have a headwind up there and you have a headwind when you turn around and come back. They time it like there's no tomorrow, that you cannot get a tailwind. The elite pros sometimes now jag it, and that's when you know the times are really quick. They'll get a tailwind to get them home. Okay, and then when you do get a tailwind to get yourself home, you're also fresher to get off the bike because you've had a bit of a break in the intensity, and then you run better. And that's when those low 740 and through to the 820 times come. And anyway, it's windy. It's also, you're on the volcano, so the ground's hot. You can fry an egg on the rocks.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. And so you're riding for 4 to 4:15, I think they ride now, to probably for the punters and the a lot of the challenged athletes, they're out there for 7-8 hours on the bike, and then they have to run. It's changed. The course has changed a little bit. It is not as tough as it was.
Really? Okay.
But it's still tough. Yeah. It's just that they've changed it. You used to run, when I did it in 1990, you used to run right out into the lava fields, a long way out in the lava fields, turn around at a big Bud Light, blow up thing. You're thinking, what I wouldn't do for one of those at the moment. And then you go down into the Energy Lab and a couple of other spots, and they used to run you, the first thing that you encountered in the start of the run was they'd run you down to the old Hilton, and it would be running down a hill for at least half a kilometre downhill, and then turn around and come back up it, it's steep. It's almost like steps. It's it's a 12% incline at some point on it in the stinking heat, and it's an oven down in there. So all of this, and there's blokes like Mark Allen and Dave Scott and Scott Molina and all these Scott Tinley, brilliant athletes going in with it when it was a really hard race like that, and still doing 8:06, 8:07, 8 hours and 6. It's just, as soon as the gun goes, they're sprinting.
That's crazy.
And their
fitness levels, but like
incredible.
And
mental
obviously,
fitness.
I was going to say, when you think about someone's body fitness like that, doing 8 hours and going through that much trauma with the body, their mental state has to be something just at a different level, at altogether. I can't even find words to put that in, but just to have that mental state to do that is crazy. And I mean, you've been through those triathlons where your mental state had to do, but as you say, when you look at those guys and they're doing 8 hours on such a treacherous Ironman circuit, you're still even yourself shaking your head, just going,
I do.
Wow.
Mate. I do shake my head. Look, the course is fast.
Yep.
There's slow and fast courses in Ironman.
Okay.
So you can never really compare your own time to those of other courses. So some of the guys that went really fast, I come over to Australia and do the Foster Ironman and get smashed and go slow.
Yeah, right.
So because the road was rough and it was hilly and crosswinds and pouring rain and all sorts of different things. You go to New Zealand and you're swimming in, in the ocean and you're through 1 foot swells hitting you in the head or wind chops and so on. So everything's a different course, horses for courses. You come to Melbourne. There was a fantastic Ironman here in Melbourne that used to run out of St Kilda and take you out on a freeway. And when you come back, you ride uphill. So the first half is you're riding uphill, but you're fresh and strong.
Yeah.
You turn around, you're coming downhill with it. When you're normally tiring, you're getting this assistance and you're looking, I've done that one, and you're looking at your speedo and you're doing 50k an hour and I'm in downhill and you think, wow. And then all of a sudden, these guys are all doing sub 9 hour times on that course.
Yeah.
And we're like, something's wrong here. And it's just the way the course is. It's just fast. It's not short or anything like that, but
there's
the demographics of it,
factors.
Right? Yeah, if you get a tailwind in a Australian Ironman, like we used to Foster, if you get the tailwind there, you're taking 20 minutes, 30 minutes off your time.
Really?
That's the difference.
Yeah, okay,
so you could be a 9 hour Ironman and do an 8:30, or you could be a 9.5 and do just under 9.
Yeah.
If you got that tailwind on that day. So but it was jagging.
It's like the luck, the factors, everything sort of.
It's like people say, if I, this is something that's really interesting. You hear them say, I'll never win anything. I'll never win a lottery. All right, but they never buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Right? So you go in these races, you're buying a lottery ticket, you're just having a crack, and and at the elite level, you talk about the mental side of the mental resilience to keep going forward and not letting your body let you down because your mind's saying stop or you something's wrong. There's always a hole, but on the other side of it, there's always a better side. So you hit this hole, you hang in there as long as you can. You might have been at it for 7 hours at this point, and then towards the end of the run, you're really starting to hurt and everything's falling to bits. You've got to hang in there because you know you can get through this. And then on the other side, a different food, a sugar, a Coke or whatever you have picks you up and away you go again, and those are, at the elite level when I did an 8 hour Ironman in 94 up at Foster, and it was the gun went. Was it? And it was full tilt.
I think that was your fastest one, wasn't it?
Fastest, 8:50, fastest time. And I tried to go faster, but it was just like the next year I came back with, the year before in 93, I did 9:02 and it killed me because the benchmark for all of us in those days was break 9 hours. We didn't have the bike technology. We didn't have all the aid stations. We didn't have the knowledge. The things like golf, golf, you're a lover of golf. I've played it all my life. I've played it all my life. Yeah, I know. If you're playing it, you're good. That's all you worry about.
That's true.
It just spoils a good walk sometimes. But the golf technology has revolutionised golf to the point now I see people who couldn't play golf well are playing golf well. So players now are getting really low handicaps. There's no way they would have done it with the old technology club. Well, triathlon's no different. My current bike is what's known as the Cervelo P5.
And what's the cost of those? Because I know
that's a $20,000.
$20,000 bike.
Yeah, it's fully electronic. There's no cables on it. The brakes are hydraulic. It's a completely different concept. And I get on that with my young guys in my training group in the morning, and they hate me bringing it out because they get no wind assistance sitting on me on it, and it's so much lighter and cuts through the air. I can comfortably at my age at 60 on that bike still push 45k an hour on it for an hour.
I've definitely heard and seen some bikes, and when they, some of the bikes I've seen, they're sort of like, oh mate, this is a $8,000, $10,000 bike, but when you say $20,000 for a pushy,
$20,000. There's more, there's worse, there's more.
Really?
Mate. Some of the tour guys, like in the Tour de France, those bikes, they're first class bikes. They weigh probably 4 kilo, I guess. There's nothing in them, and they're all disc brakes. They're all electronic gears. Oh yeah, well all those bikes would be the 20k bikes for sure. They'd have in the Tour. You have to have reliability and strength, and technology brings that. Technology. The days of flat tires. I haven't had a flat tire now. I'd say 10 or 15 years. Really? I'll wear the tyre out. I'll wear through it and then it'll go flat.
Yeah.
But I never, my mates get it cut and glass.
We're that far.
They're that far advanced.
Wow.
Carbon fibre in the tubes. The Continental GP, there's a plug. Anyway, the Continental GP that I've always raced on the 4000 tubular, which is on the time trial bike. I've never had a flat with a brand new one that I've used in a race.
Yep.
And on the road, I use the what they call it, the inflatable one with the tube inside it, and the clincher. That was the word I was trying to get, the clincher. And I can't think 10 years now since I've had a flat tyre. As long as you keep them at 110 pound, that's the secret.
Well, there you go, kids.
And keep them hard, kids.
Go
listen
and buy
up.
a $20,000 bike, you'll never get a puncher.
But the tyres are only $100, so
Really?
Yeah, the tyre's the cheapest part of the whole thing.
It's just all frame.
It's frame,
I
carbon
suppose how
fibre.
Carbon, yeah, wow.
Fibre, mate. You should see the technology. They put it in a wind tunnel, and they are looking and searching for a 1 kilowatt improvement on these elite bikes. Right? 1 kilowatt, so just a little cover over the front brake shoes and brake caliper
so much difference,
can make a 1 kilowatt difference. But you add that up over 180k in an Ironman, you're talking 3 or 4 kilometres ahead of the guy that doesn't have it.
Understandable, because when I had Dave Reynolds on, and he was talking about the flaps on the back of the car, the wind flap or whatever, he said even a couple of millimetres makes a massive difference. So I fully understand that. But it's still, that's mind-boggling, isn't it? Just by those little covers or just a wind flap for, 3 or 5 mil can just, boom, make such a difference. And when you're doing the Bathurst or when you're doing triathlon, you're over a lot of meterage and kilometres too, so it's...
you think 180k and I average it at 40k an hour, right, which is the elite time for most of the guys. They're about 45, average about 40 or so. If I average 39 over over the 4 hours, it's 4 kilometres gone.
100%.
1 kilometre difference.
Because we're so focused on just the 3 mil won't make a difference. We're not.
That's right.
I never just go, okay, 3 mil over that. I was never best at maths either, but it's such a big difference in that scenario.
It's such a, it's like driving a car. If you can drive a car from point A to B with no single stop on it, and you drive it at 1 kilometre an hour less than you would.
Well, look at the swimmers. Swimmers got all these outfits now that have got like ripples in them.
Yep. Mate, we haven't even touched on the triathlon wetsuit.
Oh,
the triathlon wetsuit, the 3.8 wetsuit. The Orca 3.8 wetsuit, greatest wetsuit they've ever designed. Comes with ribbing in the arms. It has a scaling effect on it. I put that on, and I'm swimming well in that. A lot better than I will swim in a standard wetsuit or an Orca winter suit.
So when you think back of the snakes or alligators, and they got those type of skin,
it's
taken us this many years to work out, hang on, if we have outfits that pretty much take over a crocodile who's been around for millions of years, we may be able to swim just as fast as what they can.
Oh, mate, that's where the technology comes from. It's funny you've raised that. The technology in swimsuits all comes with scaling and the fin effect that they do have on that skin. It's one directional and it works. That's why they banned them in swimming. They banned them in swimming. The suits were just making such an advantage that they had to go. It was too much. And the wetsuit in triathlon, it's not allowed in Olympics or elite levels unless the water is really, really down there in that 20 degrees. It gets cold.
It fascinates me how they've come back to really the ancient animal in regards to scaling wise that enhances everything, yet it's took technology this long or someone to actually have a light bulb moment and go, hang on a second, well, if this is going that fast in water...
No, a crocodile or a fish is millions of years old to get it right.
That's what I mean. So, true.
I guess we're taking our time to,
I'm a bit impatient there, Ken.
Well, they've embraced it, mate, and swimming records still falling.
Yep.
Now they've had to come back to basics where they're raw power again. But in triathlon, the swimming wetsuit, if it can lift my back up, my lower back and my quads up 1 inch in the water, I'm going to swim over, say, a kilometre, probably another 30 seconds quicker. Just that one adjustment. So what they do is they make around your hips and around near the top of your bum, they pad it up to 5 mil and it lifts you up. So even when you get tired, and that's what happens in endurance races, you sink, right? You start to, your pelvis drops down about half a foot when you get tired. And that's like a boat with a big motor on the back but not using it, and it's pushing through the water. In the nose, you see in boats when the nose points points to the sky. That's how you swim. Yeah. So the wetsuit puts your bum up, and of course then your head's down, and you swim fast. And even when you're fatigued, you're still swimming fast.
Wow.
So it's all technologies, you know.
Wow, it's mind-boggling. Just in a different sport that I've never competed in, but I've paid attention. Well,
have you done a team?
Yeah, I've done it actually. I have done a team. Yeah,
take that one to the bank.
I'll take that one to the bank for sure, for sure. So you've done your triathlon. You're a big help or guide there's a blind athlete, Nathan Johnston.
Yeah, Nathan Johnston.
And he's obviously, how did that friendship sort of form? Because you do a lot of guiding for him or piloting for him when he's doing triathlons. Always seeing your ugly mutt right next to him.
Yeah. Well, it sort of works like that. You become his eyes. Yeah. So, but how did it start? Look, it's on face value, it just looks like you turn up and you hop on a bike and you go do the race with him. But I'm down actually being interviewed by the compere of the Sutherland Surf Fun Run in Cronulla, a fellow named Dean Toll, and he was just asking me about the fun run and how I'd been and what I'd been doing the last 5 or 10 years, because that was a fun run that we were all at the pointy end in as young blokes, but later in life, it's more of a exercise thing. Anyway, Nathan was there. He heard me and he spoke to his friend Melinda Whiteside, who'd guided him that day, and came over. He wanted to meet me. He wanted to get into triathlon, and he knew a little bit about me. Anyway, that was it. That day, when I was standing there, and Tolly's talking to me, and I'm like, why is he talking to me? He should be talking to Nathan. So I said, talk to this bloke. Yeah. This bloke can't see, and he's just running 11K, right? So that's how it started. So Nathan got on the mic, first time he'd ever been interviewed about something like that at a major sporting event. And after that was done, he did his interview. I said, well, what do you want to do? He says, I want to do triathlons. Can you help me? I said, sure can. We'll get you into the Tri Club, and it'll have to be a big commitment by you and me. And I was married with 2 children then as well, and you have to. It becomes a bit of a balance because you've got family and commitment, but also it's not only going and doing a race with Nathan. It's you're training with him. You're
basically living with him.
Yeah, sort of. His parents are wonderful, and his sister and brother, they help him out, and he's got a good training group. My role was to be the pilot and get him through these things, but to try and get it at his level at an elite level where I can keep up with him, because if you fail, then the athlete fails, right? So you have to be on your game. You can't, it's not just a matter of turning up. You need to be fit. You can't let them down. There's no advantage. I could put the world champion with him. It won't make any difference to his ability, because they set the rules to stop you doing that. And they've made that very strict, so you can't get in front of them. On the bike, it's actually slower on a tandem bike, even though the outputs are higher. Once you hit the slightest incline, you wash all the speed out of it. Downhill gets a bit quicker, but generally they ride slower than you would if you're on your own. But then there's nutrition, right? So the guy can't see what he's eating. He can't pick it up at an aid station. You have to do that. The guide's got to learn to do all that. The guide's got to practice picking the food up and knowing you get all the right food into him. So in a short race, we just have a drink bottle and we go nuts, right? Something like a Paralympic Games, he did about 2 or 3 of those. Went really well at him. He ran 5 minutes for 20K, in a triathlon. Pretty good for you can't see. That's 4 minutes a K.
That's amazing.
It was amazing, but he can't see what he eats. No. So he has to trust you to get the right food. You have to practice it, handing it over. You have to split the power bar in 2 and give him half, and then half for yourself, because you've got to maintain your own nutrition in the longer stuff.
You got to do instead of feed,
you forget about yourself in the Ironman. You fail. You're out. He's out. He can't go and get another guide. And look, being a guide in a short race is great because you just go and do it, and but in an Ironman, there's a rule change several years ago. I actually wrote to Jimmy Riccatello in America, and we tried to get the rule changed because they brought in this thing with para-athletes that they have to have the same guide the whole way. And I understand that. Yeah. But in an Ironman, you're depleting the pool of available guides because they've got to train for a whole Ironman. Yeah, definitely. And they're doing it to help the other guy. You're not doing it for any recognition because you don't get recognition anyway, but you don't do it for that. Yeah, you've got to make sure you do not want to fail for this guy. Yep. So this athlete. So you're going the whole way in an Ironman. There's so many more variables in the Ironman. So the nutritional thing, the injury thing, fatigue thing, all these sort of changes. You need to make sure that you're physically in better condition than the athlete, the impaired athlete, because you're going to let them down. And we tried to get that rule changed so they had a separate swimmer, separate rider, and separate runner.
Yeah, right.
Because there's no advantage.
No.
You get no advantage. But the powers to be said no.
Really?
And they were really stringent with their, or really hard on their stance about it, you know, and we took it up to the point we're nearly at the point where it's discriminating against a visually impaired athlete, where you're diminishing his pool of available guides because they have to maintain this ability and commitment where it doesn't make any difference how fast they go. In fact, bad guide go slower, right?
Yeah.
But if you give them an individual guide, it's a guarantee that they're going to get through the whole race and they're going to perform better because they're not going to be hindered or slowed down by a problem with the guide.
Yeah.
And to me, that's unfair to the impaired athlete because you're making it harder for them. And
exactly.
You know, discrimination boards and all that, be having a look at that.
At the end of the day, he's dragging you along.
Of course. Oh, he has a few times. Don't you worry about that, Richie's. And he's given me a couple of uppercuts over the years. He's an incredible athlete. And look, we've been hanging out now for 13 or 14 years, and it's been a lot of fun. We went, you know, it's not only triathlons and fun runs and multi-sport events we've done a whole lot of other stuff because we're mates. So we've been away together. We've gone on charity runs together, get him away from his home life because he's stuck there.
Yep.
He's stuck with his parents as carers to get out of that whole thing. You know, mum and dad hadn't had a break from him for 30 years and we took him away with a bunch of mates in a Winnebago and went on a charity run and took him to all the pubs and he had a ball. And mum and dad finally had a break, you know, with it and some quality time.
But, you know, still the mum and dad who's done that for 30 years without a break that's amazing work. No one really sees that part of it. In the behind scenes either, does it? So
no, you're fully responsible. And, you know, the parents blame themselves from the circumstance, right?
100%.
Let's be raw. If you have a child that has a disability, you created the child.
That's
Your parents deep down do blame themselves for it. And I've spoken to them deeply about those things, and they do say, well, you know, it's our fault. Now it's our responsibility, and we have a duty of care to that child for the rest of our lives because we created it.
100%.
You know,
that in itself, when you get to athletes and mindsets, but when you get that circumstances with parents with a child with disability. That's another mindset. That's like you just turn everything off that you had thoughts of in your life, and this is your focus now for the rest of your time. That's a mindset in itself. That probably overtakes every other mindset.
It does, mate. Look, I'll give you an example. There's two boys up in Sydney called the Cardi boys. Have moved up to Kingscliff now. They were born with a thing called Batten's disease, and what it is, it's like MMD.
Yeah, okay.
They're perfectly normal at 1, 2, 3, 4. Then something starts to show. They lose their eyesight and a few other things. And by their 18, you know, they can be, if they're lucky to make 18, they're in a wheelchair and they're a vegetable. These two boys, their parents had the first one, and the first one played with our children and went everywhere perfectly normal. And he started to go, but they'd already had the second one, and their gene was making another one the same. And the poor parents, if they'd known that the first one had the gene, they wouldn't have had the second one, so to speak. But anyway, now they raise them and do the best they can with them, and we've had big fundraisers. All the wives got together 20 years ago and put together this massive fundraiser for them, and we had it at Sharks. And it was great. Daniel McPherson, and we'll touch on him. He's a great triathlete as well.
I've seen him actually on his socials doing triathlons, and I've seen he's with other obviously friends of his.
Well, he hosted that one for us, and
did he?
And we raffled Lara Bingle off.
Oh, did you?
And her uncle bought it to stop anyone having a chance. And she wasn't with Worthington then. She hadn't met him, but anyway, she was only young, and it was a big night, and that was for those boys. And what it did was raised about $250,000 or so. And this is the wives did this. We were just all helpers, the blokes, but the wives did it. They set up a board and they did the whole thing, and 100% of the money raised went straight to those family, and everyone put every cent that went straight into it and how it should be. And they built the house with up in Kingscliff for them with wheelchair access and all that stuff, and got carers in, and just their parents.
Wow, that's amazing.
Just another thing. There's another thing you probably didn't know about me.
No, mate.
The Cardi Boys has been.
I'm finding out lots of things.
Very interesting thing, and Sharks have been fantastic with that. They gave us an auditorium for free of charge, 400 people, all the entertainers that came. Shannon Olsing, everyone was there. Right, it was a big night. It was the who's who of sport and mates.
That's what you want, isn't it?
And they all free of charge. No one put their hand. That particular event, even Crazy ago, Ray Hadley said to me when I rang him to give him the update on the Monday about how much money raised, he said, we can't do that. None of us have ever done that. That's too much, I can't believe it. Well done,
Yeah,
and we were all shocked at the amount of money that was raised in that one night.
Wow.
$250,000, So
it
was interesting, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway. But that's in regards to charities, because I know you do a lot of charities. Into the police force we go. Into the police force. You're awarded many medals. Obviously, your bravery. I think you're awarded bravery. It's a couple of little incidents that you got awarded and went through. Obviously, you've done heaps of pursuits. When you saved, it was 1993, saved a man from drowning, a criminal from drowning.
Yeah.
So you were chasing him, and he jumped in the lake, river.
Yeah, no, mate, that was look, that's something that you can't unsee.
No.
He drowned, actually. So
did he really in the end?
Policing is through my life was like being a professional sportsman as well, because we went to work and we loved it.
Yeah.
And you were doing it without a lot of the restrictions that are on you nowadays, not because anything really has changed.
No.
All the guys I had always had the best integrity and everything's in good faith, but sometimes the perception of something being videoed isn't telling the truth.
Exactly.
So everyone's guarded now, And social media hasn't helped. It's hindered, and the regulation on it, they get away with it because you need to show the whole videos, and what leads into something to that escalation and all that. So, but people are wise to it.
Yeah.
Some are, but some to use it to their advantage to retaliate or get out of something, And look, bottom line, I'm old school. If you've done the crime, do the time, and get away from this. I'm a victim, I've committed a crime, now I'm a victim, and I'm going to play the victim all the way through court. And, there's some reasonable circumstances for that with upbringings and so on, but certainly it gets played on, and it frustrates me a little bit because you have some lawyers, and I've got mates that are lawyers are really good, and there's like cops, the 99% of them are really good, but there's some of them just all they're working on is getting the client off the charge no matter whether they've done it or not.
That's right.
That's not, and even the good lawyers will tell you that we don't operate like that. You're not allowed to operate like that. It's like a cop taking a quid on a job for a search warrant or something. It's exactly the same standard. So you can't have that. And unfortunately, the two clash. And anyway, but it's all about ethics. And I see the young cops nowadays have like triathlon, so many more hurdles put in front of them, so much more harder to train on the bike on a road. Well, police officer now, has a lot more in front of him that he has to adjust or adapt to. So I take my hat off to the young ones coming through the academies now and then out and thrown into that mess out there that you see. Escalation of knife violence and domestic violence and all those sorts of things.
That's getting huge, isn't it?
It is, mate.
I don't know what's the go, why it's doing all that, but
parenting.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think when the kids get to the stage of whatever age, something has to be accountable back here at the parents' level. Like the kids can't just be obviously born and then next minute they're into some sort of violence or something. Something else happens. And I've dealt with a lot of mentoring teens through martial arts or boxing, and you're right. I see where it breaks down from the parenting side and it gets to the male or the female, which is sad because I've got two kids and tried to do the best job I could. But you see it these days, and it's a sad thing.
It's a learning curve, right? And parenting, we the same as you. We did mentoring. Kids had come out of court for a referral program from the magistrate to come to the PCYC, and they'd have to undertake just some programs there to save going into incarceration. And I had a role where I'd go and do a talk to them, and it was about arguing with authority. And we compartmentalise it into 4 categories of referees, school teachers, mum and dad, and then the cops, right? And don't argue with them because you're going to lose, and there's forums for it and so on. And out of the 6 kids we used to get, 4 or would listen and take on board what we were telling them. And a lot of them would say the same thing. We've never heard this before. So they've never been shown how to use a bit of common sense. Like if the referee penalises you and you know he's wrong, there's no point in arguing. He's not changing his mind, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And he'll give it back later.
Yeah.
But don't mess it up for the team, because if you argue with the referee then, what happens? He then talks to his referee mates.
That's right.
And then the next time you play, a week later, that referee's on your case,
That's
right? That's how the world works.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is this talk we used to do with the young kids, and they go, we never heard this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I come back to where I'm being brutal and say parenting.
Yep.
Parents need to train their kids about the dangers of putting themselves in harm's way when they argue with authority.
100%.
Because you put yourself in harm's way.
Yep.
And it's usually a no-win situation.
Yep.
Save it for another forum like court, or go at the police station and argue there, or go to the referees, judiciary, whatever. Do it later and just get on with it. Move on from it. It's a mistake and wear it. But you see it now on TV. Every decision on a sporting referee is challenged and questioned.
Oh, it is. It's crazy sometimes.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It just slows everything down.
And that's they're trying to make the games faster, but then they're slowing it down with all these other, the bunkers. Let's preview that for 5 minutes. And mate, everyone's got their breath back. Everyone's, they're rested. So it's a bit of a strange one.
Look, you see it, Rich. You see it in life, right? You go into the crowds and you see it at sporting events.
Yep.
You see the parents yelling it.
Oh, yeah.
And screaming, right?
Nothing like Melbourne here, brother. I've been around a lot of sporting stadiums in my life, and Melbourne, the AFL fanatics, the fans, they are fanatical. Not only that, it goes from, I see grandmother, mother, daughter, father.
It's called passion, mate.
Oh, 100%. And to be honest, I've got nothing against it, but my brother and I, we go along to these games. We just, buy the cheap tickets and we just watch the crowds, and, oh, man, just the atmosphere, especially at the AFL games, is something second to none that I've seen in my life at a sporting
I've been to a few of them down here, mate, and
they're passionate.
I do not wear a Swans outfit when I go down into the MCG. I just wear neutral clothes.
Mate.
I'm AFL neutral when I arrive here.
Doggies, mate. You got to have a doggy. I've got a doggy scarf for you.
Mate. Yeah, right. I'll put it on.
Western Bulldogs, mate.
They make the finals.
I think it's Saturday or Sunday. I'm not quite sure.
Right, we're digressing now, but anyway,
we'll have to have a look. So going on again. So you captured what they class the red cap bandit back in the day.
This one's going to get me in trouble. Oh, mate, there's a whole book on that one.
Is there? Okay,
there's a whole book, and look, it's little known about him.
Yeah.
But this guy committed the most armed robberies, what we believe to be the most armed robberies ever by an individual in the world.
Yeah,
and he's in Sydney, right, in Australia, right, of all places. He does 57 armed robberies in a matter of 6 months, and eludes police. And we were in charge, or not so much in charge, but our unit, it was called Special Operations Group back then in the early 90s. And it wasn't long before I actually left the cops to go and chase my dream of triathlon and whatever. And this bloke was terrorising Sydney at night, And the thing is, there's victims in all of this. These people are standing there with a gun pointed at them, doing their job at a service station, and they're shattered and they're damaged for life. And I still talk to one of the victims in particular, and she's still damaged from that incident that she had with the red cap bandit, and has had a whole lot of problems in her life with, marriage and other things after it. So you can see the effects of that. But this bloke, he'd total clean skin, never been in trouble in his life at all. And as it turned out, was a police radio operator, so he knew the methodologies. And he lost his job as I think if I remember, Bendix brake rep, and had to return the car. And on that Friday was the day he decided that he was going to do armed robbery. So he returns the car and he walks around the corner. Here's another car with keys in it. So he steals a car and has that for 6 months, drives his kids to school in it, gives it to his wife to drive and do shopping. It didn't get reported for some weeks because it was in a stock of a car dealership. So they hadn't noticed it missing. Wow. And then 6 months into it, he does all these armed robberies all over the place with the red cap on. And, he's just, like I said, 57 of them. And then one day he gets the better of himself and decides to return the car. We'd been working on it. We'd missed him by seconds sometimes.
Really?
He'd seen us in a stakeout. We were under instructions in those days. If he came into the garage with the gun, you shoot him. there's no mucking around because this guy's pointing the gun when he walks in at the attendant.
Yeah, true.
Comes in with it pointed straight at him.
Wow.
And all I could show you photos and footage of all that. So there was no time to even warn him because he's just going to shoot you. And he was very lucky that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Lucky that he missed all the confrontation because that's how we used to deal with things back then.
Yeah.
And anyway, he got really, really cold feet on robbery number 57.
Yeah.
And he pulled out of it. He saw a police car come into where we were actually staked out. And the police car came in and grabbed some food and whatever at 1 a.m. and he was sitting off the opposite side of the road and we came around from behind the counters. You've seen us, obviously, maybe. And he decides, so he goes over to another area in Sydney and does one there and then decides, that's it, I'm done. And the next day returns the car and when he returned the stolen car, they saw it. That's a car that got ripped off. So next thing, this MMA fighter,
really?
A guy from up in sort of pre-MMA, but he was a kickboxer and a really good one. He was the head mechanic at the Ford dealership and he saw him come in it and then fronted him and he drove off. But he comes back again, so they get him and drag him out of the car and he pulls a gun on him and they kick the shit out of him and disarm him. Yeah. And we're sitting, believe it or not, after 6 months of trying to catch this guy, we're sitting at the intersection opposite this watching it all go on. What the hell? So then the job come over, we went in there and straight away, he's the bloke we're looking for. He's the guy in all the pictures. There's the guy in the hat. So I grabbed him and threw him in the truck and I said to him, you're the Red Cap Bandit. He said, yep, I am. And that was it.
That was it.
That was then the next 3 days of interviews of 57 armed robberies. He pleaded guilty to the lot of it and did 10 years in jail and got deported for it.
Where did we?
New Zealand.
Oh, it was in New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah. Yeah, so we've got a book together on that one about the whole project and how we, it was in, trying to hunt him down and trying to find out who this guy was and all the near misses. We put it all together and I still have all the documents. The book's nearly finished, so it'll be an interesting read when it's done.
I was one thing that popped up when I was having a read and I was like,
a good job, mate. That was a good job, and just a pulp fiction in it, to be in the right place, the right time, and the wrong place, and all these things going on with it, and then to hear his story where he loses his job, he's married with kids, he lives a perfectly normal double life by day, and there was this period where like 1 week would go by or 2 weeks, he was doing them every night, and then all of a sudden there's none. That was school holidays.
Oh, right.
And he gets fronted outside of the Appin school by one of the mums. You look like that bloke that's all on the TV, Michael. I won't say his last name. And he said, "No, us. Don't worry about that, cuz us New Zealanders all look the same." Right? And he got away with it. He used that card every time, and he got fronted a couple of times. And no one rang, no one reported it to Crime Stoppers. So he just eluded everyone.
Wow.
Yep. And you see RBT. This is a good one for the listeners. He, in his admissions, used to see the RBT. He got pulled into a couple of them, and he just played dumb. Yeah. And he got away with it. And they didn't. In those days, didn't have the ANPR checking the number plates.
Okay.
But then he got flashed out a lot. He said he used to drive around, he'd get flashed out by people flashing headlights. Yeah. And that's to slow people down or whatever for getting a speeding ticket. Yeah. And, so be it. People want to do that. But you're also telling people it's just doing armed robberies. The cops are up the road.
Yeah.
You got to think about that, you know? You got to think about that. You can't be narrow-minded on this stuff. Yeah. You don't flash your lights because you're going to save someone you don't know from killing themselves in the car anyway, but you're also telling people that are wanted, people in a stolen car, pedophiles, all these bad peoples, people that have abducted people, Middle Eastern crime, you're telling them the police are up the road. Yeah, by flashing for a speeding ticket.
Well,
right?
You got to think of that stuff.
No, but you've got to.
Yeah,
and that's we did a bit of an education program with that when I was in the cops. And
you don't realise that. No. You just think you're helping another citizen from a speeding ticket, don't you?
Oh, look, Janine Balding, she was taken from Sutherland Railway Station on Tuesday night and driven to Blacktown where she was murdered. And they were asked, my understanding, they were asked how they were able to drive in 1987 or 88 when RBT was huge with the buses.
Yeah.
How'd you get all the way to Blacktown without seeing the cops? Oh, no, people flash their headlights. We just go around the back streets.
Wow.
Whilst they're sitting on her in the back of the car. So Janine lost her life because someone maybe someone flashed their headlights.
Wow, that takes a whole new perspective of flashing life.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not flashing my lights at nobody anymore.
No, well,
they can get picked up. They can get picked up.
It does change people's perspective about it when we talk about it like that,
Yeah, 100%.
And again, it's, road toll anyway. You've got 1,400 people nationally killing themselves every year.
Yeah.
That's a whole football field of people this year that won't be there next year, right?
Wow.
And so, we've all got to sort of have a bit of a think about how we behave, and on the road especially, because we're very desensitised to road trauma.
Yeah.
That's right. Only 1,400, I say, 1,400 with all respect, but there's 20,000 that end up in hospital that are either in a wheelchair or are seriously injured in rehab for the next 5 years of their life. 20,000 nationally. You don't hear about those ones.
No, you don't. No.
Anyway, we've digressed again, mate. Sorry.
Big numbers then. So the one little subject with the Cronulla riots, were you? What was your role in the Cronulla? Because that was obviously, I think that's going back 15 years ago now, or a little bit longer than that.
Mate, it's one of my best friends, retired Assistant Commissioner Mark Goodwin.
Yep.
He was the commander of all of that, and he's he is one of the best blokes you'd ever meet. And we were all rostered on for it. I missed the Saturday. I was lucky, I guess you'd call it lucky, but I worked the Wednesday when it all escalated. Okay. And it was our night of our Christmas party at Cronulla, Cronulla Surf Lifesaving Club. Yeah, so it all escalated through the day. They were trying to find this one person who'd attacked one of the lifeguards, and it went on, and we're getting pelted at that stage by locals with beer cans and everything, right back on that Wednesday. And I remember Mark Goodwin coming down with the commander, and they were copping abuse from the surfers and whatever. But the whole thing has had a misconception applied to it that the Shire is racist. Right?
Yeah, okay.
And unfairly tainted by a government agency newspaper that said that the Southern Shire, words to quote, is full of 90% Anglo-Italian, Anglo-Irish people who have no idea about assimilation. That was the similar words to quote in this newspaper article they did on it. Let me tell you, in the 60s, I grew up at school. My best friend was Italian. One of my other mates was Chinese. Two of the others were Lebanese. We have one of the biggest Lebanese communities outside of the Lakemba and Belmore area. Yep. It's over in the Shire in Kirrawee, where all the war refugees were relocated after the Tripoli War and went and worked in all the factories there. Massive. So our schools, we're a big melting pot. There wasn't Anglos running around everywhere.
Yeah, all separate.
Gorick isn't Smith, Jones and Williams, mate. It's Belgium, French. It's a Bitzer from all over the joint, right? So, but we got tainted with this, that the Shire is so divided, it's so Anglo, and it's not. It's completely the opposite. It's one of the best examples of multiculturalism in the country. We have Greeks and Italians that owned all the shops there. Greeks and Italians. You go into the fruitier, he was Greek, and his son is your best mate at school.
Yeah.
So, but we all just got on and laughed and had fun. And schooling for me was a very valuable time, growing up in an area where we had children coming from various suburbs all around us and all walks of life and all races and religions in our school. So we learned to accept it. But then to see that we were branded with that incident down there as racist was very hurtful. Yeah. You only have to walk down the main street and look at all the diversity in the restaurants and the food outlets in the main mall street there. We've got Thai, we've got Chinese, we've got Lebanese, all that. But no, that never played part of it. What it was nothing to do with race. Yeah. It was nothing to do with anything from a policing perspective. It was to do with behaviour.
Yeah.
And we were having people come down on large numbers on weekends where the younger family members and siblings would get together, not see each other normally, and they come to the parks from anywhere from right across Sydney, and they get together and then they go up to the beach. Say, Mum and Dad, see you, we're going for a walk, trying to go and play ball, and they go up the beach and cause havoc and deliberately kick the soccer ball into the crowd and walk 5 abreast down the mall and push people out of the way, and I live there, so I experienced it. I'm walking down the mall one day and 5 young men walking straight towards me, just pushing everyone out of the way and spitting and doing all the shit that they do. And we're seeing all this all the time. And then obviously it was going in other parts of Sydney as well. It was behaviour.
Yeah.
And then what was worse, they tried to fix it with bad behaviour.
Yeah.
Done work.
Yeah, right.
Done work. Right?
So the sole incident with that, how it all started with the lifeguard, was that like a Lebanese person attacking, or was it Is that how it...
No, it was an Australian person of a Lebanese background.
Really?
So we're all Australians, right, Rich?
Yeah, true.
And I like to always describe that. When you hear people, I'm a proud Lebanese Australian. No, you're a proud Australian with Lebanese background, right?
Yeah,
and I'm a proud Australian with a French and Belgian background, right?
Yep.
We're all the same like that.
Irish,
and we have to play, it's a play on words, but we have to be careful how we approach that.
100%.
And it was a young Australian male who got in an altercation with the lifeguard. It wasn't a full-time lifeguard. It was a part-time lifesaver.
Yeah.
So, but it becomes a lifeguard from a media perspective because that's the value of Australia, the big bronzed Aussie lifeguard, right?
100%.
But it wasn't. It was a young, probably just two young blokes had a conflict with each other, and it started and it got worse. And look, it's a long time ago, so my memory's a bit clouded on it now, on the exact incident that led to it. But he assaulted the lifesaver, and then that one led to another, getting police down, and then police trying to find him and chasing him all day. He on the running around the Black Sea units, and I remember it went on for hours trying to find this bloke. Yeah. And then, of course, it triggered the first time modern technology comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Let's just digress for a second. Let's go to extreme weather events.
Yeah.
Right. The only difference in the extreme weather events in the world at the moment is someone's filming it and putting it on 6 o'clock news, midnight news.
That's right.
And we're seeing it all the time, right? Yeah. Where I wouldn't know it's hailing at Menai 20 years ago, but it's hailing up there. Yeah. But now I get to see it, right? Well, this is the same. These altercations had been going on, but all of a sudden someone texted a message out and triggered it. The Lebs are attacking the lifeguards, right? And that triggered it. Yeah. And that went out everywhere through social media rapidly to the point that it was Chinese whispers,
story changes.
Rich Fogarty's wearing a black shirt with RVCA sponsors on it and a few other things, right, as we talk here. Chinese whisper, that'll come back to us in a month's time, and it'll be a purple suit with polka dots on it and, unicorns drawn on it, right?
100%,
yeah. That's what happened with the riots.
Yeah, wow.
I'm trying to put it in a perspective we all understand,
I do remember it, even though, as I say, it's 15 years ago, but I do remember it because obviously I've got some friends who were living in that area, and they were all into it as well. And it was just, it was.
I had friends, the Lebanese mates from school. They wouldn't come down to Cronulla; they were frightened after it. We had also have a business. We were doing commercial signage, and we were in the night of the retaliations. I was in Edgecliff putting up a big sign on the Edgecliff Centre overnight, and I drove back in a Holden ute, and I drove back through Brighton. They were all going past me, going over to Coogee to smash all the cars. I didn't know. I just thought, what's all this about? Because you could swing a cat anywhere, deadly quiet, Monday night, and then I get down, there's cop cars going everywhere, get down to Cronulla, cop cars going everywhere, and what it was, they'd driven around, they'd come out from the western suburbs, a large contingency of Australian Lebanese males in that 20 to 30-year-old demographic, baseball bats and knives, and in that one night smashed cars from basically Cronulla through to Coogee over in the northern beaches, stabbed half a dozen people. So it just more bad behaviour, retaliating against the bad behaviour, which was retaliating against the bad behaviour 3 days before, right? Wow. So this went on, and it did no one any favours. No. All the behaviour, those bad behaviours, all it did was the majority of good people stood back and went, wow, look how bad these people are behaving, and look at the damage it's doing to all the good work everyone's been doing for years. Wow. The two kids on the train, you probably remember on the train with the sergeant gets the baton and swings it through the crowd and went around the world. There was this incident at the railway station on the riot day where one I believe lived in Kiroi in the Shire. He was Ali Khaled, I think his name was. He got on the train with his mate, and every Sunday morning they go down the beach and just hang around Cronulla and come back. They got down there and went, wow. So they got put back on the train, and then the mob of crazy people from all over Sydney went through the train. And anyway, there was a sergeant, Craig Campbell, who was standing back, and he couldn't get to them, and they were getting absolutely beaten to death. And it was brutal. And these two young kids, again, just two young Australian kids, sitting on the seat in the train are getting shockingly towed up by some local blokes as well as a mix. And Craig Campbell, the sergeant, gets a bat and he sees him. He can't get through to them. There's no OC sprayed left. This has been going on all day. So he battens his way through the crowd and clears them. And that made news around the world. And he put himself at a huge risk to go onto the train. And then you see it on the footage. He goes through the vestibules all the way through the seats, gets to the end, and then battens these people beating these two guys away, all on his own, and gets them and retreats with them out of the train and saves their life. One had a fractured skull and teeth broken, and blood was sprayed all over the train vestibule, and he saved them that day, right? That's that guy. And incredible. Probably one of the bravest policing acts under those circumstances of a riot situation that I've ever seen in all my years and in the history of Australian policing. It's probably one of the most bravest acts to save the lives of two people he didn't know that goes against everything that was standing for on that day, according to the mob. So he's helping the people he shouldn't be helping, and then the mob could have turned on him. But he did what he had to, and he got them out of there. And there's fantastic footage. And, you know, a few people got you could hear the aluminium baton hitting the hardened parts of people's bodies, I suppose. Wow. And it was huge footage. It went around the world. Actually, your famous Victorian Rex Hunt wrote this beautiful letter to the police commissioner and to the commander of Cronulla Police about Craig Campbell, and actually had rung, I think, Ken Moroney and said that bloke should be given a bravery medal, you know, because I can say this because I'm out now, but management were very some people in some of the New South Wales Police Force management had a very dim view of his actions that day, and which led to him having a nervous breakdown and suffering post-traumatic stress disorder and being discharged from the police force. There's your best hero, saved 2 lives, and that's how he was treated. But Ken Moroney, the commissioner, put it right.
Ones in that position themselves, and would they have done that same position? No. Would they have done that same thing? They would have probably just walked off that train, asking for backup or whatever else. But
that's right. No, it would have been. Look, you make that decision. Do you put yourselves in harm's way? Well, you swear an allegiance to the Queen of England that you'll protect. The oath of the police force is you will protect. Serve and protect. That's the American one. We're more of we will protect and lose your life to protect that of a civilian. Yep. You swear to that. And the Old Crimes Act, which has been rescinded now for LEPRA, the Old Crimes Act, one of the subsections in it was that if you didn't do that, you could be charged with neglect of duty and you would go to jail. Wow. Right? And he was an old school cop, so he's still on the Old Crimes Act, but he went in, he saved the lives of those kids. There was no other way that could have been dealt with because they would have been killed. 100%, they were jumping, and it's no exaggeration, Rich. They were jumping from the top of the seat onto them on the floor when they were knocked out, laying on the floor, onto their heads and kicking into them, and it was just abhorrent behaviour, and rightfully so. Most of them went to jail for it. And then there was this blow up by the media about they've gone after all of the rioters on the day, but they haven't gone after the perpetrators that kicked this whole thing off. But that was again miscommunication. Everyone that was bad behaving all went to jail for it. Media have some media, and I tell you what, they got some. They're special people, some of them, but some. And then they do good things like what's just recently happened in Sydney with the recent case of the Chris Dawson matter. You've got Hedley Thomas there, he's in Ben Fordham, that have gone and put together this incredible podcast and reopened the case and got a conviction. And you can talk about it carefully. You've got to be careful what you say. It'll probably go to an appeal, but certainly things don't add up in a story. And if you give an alibi, and this is a policing perspective, you give an alibi and it's got holes all in it. Yep. And a judge sits there and looks at it and says, hang on a minute, here's a married woman with two children, loving them right up to the day she leaves, disappears off the face of the earth, but still talks to the partner for 8 weeks after his words, his admission and his alibi, but doesn't talk to her mother. Yeah. No judge is going to understand that. He's going to go, there's something wrong here. Yeah. And, of course, it stood out that he was telling fibs.
It's amazing that things simple like the podcast. And
the podcast kicked that off. It's a Rich Life could lead to solving some big crime one day.
What Life projects come up with? What mysteries do we have to solve? The brain mystery, that's all I'm sort of wanting to...
doing a wonderful thing.
Oh, man, I just want to try and get into people's mindsets and just their journeys in general. But so you've got the police force. What year you retire of the police force?
Okay, so 1985 started right through to 93 and then took leave leave without pay and resigned basically to go and chase the triathlon dream.
Yeah, still carried on with the triathlon stuff. Yeah,
and I still had the electrical business, which Dad had retired, and he was full-time with us in that business. So we had all my sporting mates working in my business. The great Clayton Stevenson, Olympic cyclist, Andrew Lloyd, the runner. All these guys came and worked in our business. So there was a fallback for us all. So we could go off. I could go overseas for 3-4 weeks and do races in Namibia and Vanuatu and Guam and those places. Yeah, it didn't matter. And if I come home, I didn't get any prize money or didn't get any incentive monies, or Foster's had pulled the pin on me. I could always have that. So, but it wasn't really till about 98 I got back to business work. And then police force were doing this massive recruitment drive in the early millennia after the Olympics. And I got asked to look at team leader's job in ASIO because a lot of security had happened after September 11. They were looking for team leaders. So I got asked to do that, and I put in an application. At the same time, I called for a reference from one of my old inspectors, and he rang me, said, "You're an idiot, come back to the cops." That's how I came back. His name's Stephen O'Grady. He does a hell of a lot for the disabled Olympians, and he's massive, this guy. And he said, "Come back and you can help us with leader and all these other things, you know." So sure enough, we made some phone calls, and you strike up your own deal on your return with your super and whatever. And so I was very lucky. They looked after everything again and pretty much gave me everything back that I'd left with.
Wow, that's
and then 6 months later, I was in the promotional game and became a sergeant probably a year and a half after that. And then there was a really bad job in around 2006. I went to it. It was a boat accident. Didn't make the media, this one, but it was worse than the one in Sydney a month later. We had 2 boats hit each other, 7 people ejected into the water in one and 2 killed in another. And it was just a disastrous job. And old stupid here, me, I'm down at Cronulla and they're having an argument on the radio about whether who will go to this job, and because of one side of the river's looking at it and the other side's not, it's gone to the wrong suburb station and all this. So I used to water ski down there with mates when we were on night shifts. We'd go water skiing in the day, and I knew everything in that whole area there at Kangaroo Point ended up in this one spot. So I jump in the car and go there, and I'm there. I'm first off, and I'm there, and a 20-minute drive, but I was still first there. And there's these people. Anyway, the water police had gone and picked up one boat, and they were out and they were bringing it over, and I'm coordinating the whole thing. Anyway, the outcome of that was probably some months later, I became very unwell from it. And I think it was a whole combination of living a James Bond lifestyle in the cops, where I was chasing crooks all the time. I mean, some of the foot pursuits were horrendous. I nearly got run over by train with high-speed stuff. We got shot at. We, I ended up in a big pursuit and got run over, and then shoot out and my gun broke and didn't work, and I got run over again, and just endless stuff, right? And it just has an impact on you.
You just can't mentally do that.
No. Combined with all the people that you've done that passed away, deceased, all the car accidents, road trauma, then the domestic violence where you go to the job and it's a murder, and all those things really impact on it. And all cops in their first 3 or 4 years go through this. They see all this stuff because frontline, you cannot get out of it. You've got to do 3 years. In Melbourne, it's the same 3 years before you go to specialised.
I do remember my old man was a copper back in when we were young in Muswellbrook and I think Broken Hill. And I think that's why he gave it away in the end. He told us, I'm not quite sure the full story, but he told us that he turned up to this, I think it was a car accident or something where 2 young boys died, kids, and he had us at home.
That's right.
And he just went, boom, that's done for me.
It changes your outlook. When it's very similar, the incident of trauma is similar to your family situation, or someone in it. And the boat accident, as it turned out, I knew someone in that.
Really?
And I'd only been speaking to her only a couple of days before as part of the business with some maintenance we were doing on real estate agents.
Wow.
Anyway, it's it knocks you about, and it was the end. And look, Pete Brock passed away. There was a whole lot of things going on in my life as well. From the motorsport background and knowing Bev and all that sort of stuff as my old school teacher, everything was impacting, and it was endless. And anyway, I hung in there, and I went and was referred and went and saw the psychiatrist and started all the coping therapies and techniques. And then something that was a little bit more unique for me, I was able to use sport and exercise as one of the number one keys to mental fitness.
That can be such
incredible to balance it. I have a really bad day, and I haven't been a good father. It's affected my family and my married life because you become difficult at home. You don't even know. No. If you're going mad, you don't know you're mad, right?
No,
and everyone's looking at you saying, "Look at that mad bloke over there," but you don't know you're mad.
You're mad. I'm not mad.
That's right. So post-traumatic stress disorder is not so much like a bipolar or an incident of mental health. It's more of an injury, and it is very manageable. Unfortunately, it's leading to a hell of a lot of self-harm and suicide in law enforcement around Australia at the moment. Just in the last number of weeks in New South Wales alone, I think we've lost 4.
Really?
By the hand of their own firearm, or there was one incident I'm aware of up at the freeway where the young officer just decided he'd had enough with everything. Things had gone wrong. We won't go into the detail, but he walked straight out in front of a semi. And this is all related to post-traumatic stress, just like the military. So the military go away and with the ultimate respect, they go away and they do a sortie and they see bad things and they come home and they're dealing with it and it's really hard on them. And we're so lucky we've got great military people here, but police doing it every day here at home. Similar stuff, not so much war zone stuff, but you're going to the bad car accident, you're going to watch people burn in a car.
It's all negative, isn't it? It is. It's really all. That's the hardest bit that I thought when I was going to apply for to be a police officer, and luckily they didn't accept me, but
might have been a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, mate. I think so, because I deal with my own stuff, and as you say, exercise. That's how I get through things with my, mental health all the time. I just go, go for a run, go for a gym session or something. But it's police force or ambulance. There's nothing real positive in it, is it?
No, it isn't.
And it's hard to comprehend from an outsider. Because
this is why we do charity work. That's why philanthropy is huge in the first responders. They have, so much fundraising going on. They're always doing charity things. Everything's about, even their own little local soccer team might go and raise money, right? There's this big push for it to give back. You've already given everything to your job, but you want to give back. And I think it's a coping technique. We all use it. We use the fundraisers and all that to get drive and a sense of self-worth.
It's self-worth.
But you look at me now and you look at me, I'm 60, but I don't look 60. I'm fit and healthy, right on the outside.
I was going to say 40, but if you're saying 60,
I'll marry you. So on the outside, the point I'm making on the outside, I look fit and healthy and happy, right? But what's inside, and I'll describe it. Let's be raw. Over in the right-hand side of my head here right now is a little baby that died in front of me at a cot death. And it's sitting there and I cannot get it out of my head, no matter where I am. So when I go to sleep, I have my psychiatrist got me through this coping program to go to sleep to get all those things out of my head, right? So I'm looking happy on the outside and everyone's thinking, he's fit, he's happy, and, we're doing this stuff here in the media and I've had a great life, with a whole lot of stuff, but I've had to carry these injuries in the head, and the whole thing is you've got to try and manage it because it can get the better of you, and it does, and it's very difficult. So people don't see us on the outside of what's really going on the inside. So the Robin Williams things, and look at Paul Green recently, and from the Sharks' perspective there, he was a good guy, but no one has any idea, and everything looks good. So there mustn't be anything wrong.
Yeah, no one asks that question.
No one's asking that question. And so the people who look the best and are really look like everything's going right, they're the ones you've really got to ask, mate, are you really okay?
Yeah.
And if you ask me, I'd sit here now and we could spend another 2 hours and I could tell you how bad things can be and stuff, And it's in there, but you just try and mask it and try and deal with it, talk to your mates about it. The cops are really good like that with the mates, the retired guys.
Yeah, okay.
So
look, it's really everyday battle, isn't it?
It is.
It's like, you say athletes say battle, but they're doing a sport, they're doing something they love and it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
But coming from the background like you, and I'm the same. I'll be truthful and say, like, every day from certain incidents in my life, every day is just a battle. It's just like you get up and you might be happy, you might be lovable here, there, but there's always that thing that you go, okay, I've got to battle through this day. And that's why when I hear people talk conversations, they go, I can't wait for 5 years and I have the house and I have the cars and all the money, and I'm thinking, man, I would not even be able to think 5 years ahead.
Yeah.
Like me, it's a battle every single day.
Yeah.
just to live life in a positive way as best I can.
Yeah, you wake up every morning, you got to make a decision what to do to be positive, right? And this is this mental fitness thing, and it's right across the spectrum. Women seem to deal with it better. They have the empathy side of things much better worked
out. They just chat to each other.
Yeah,
obviously, they talk about a lot of different things.
Yeah, how about you and me too? Probably, mate, how
100%.
champion blokes we are. But certainly, look, the men don't deal with it right, and they have all the things in place, which is good.
Yeah.
The lifelines and call people, and anyone listening to this, if you are struggling, you know where to call. But there's something missing where that decision gets made and the mind's not going to be changed, and no one knows.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone's working at the moment. We're trying to find out, what is making that decision, because they don't tell anyone.
No.
People openly say, I'm going to go and kill myself, right? Really bad thing. And sometimes that may be the case, but a lot of that's attention. They're probably out of the 20 mates that I've lost, and that's how many I've lost over the years, and not from cops, but from various different walks of life.
Yeah.
The least expected ones that I've lost have right back to about 85 was the first one. He was broken-hearted, but we had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. And there was no indication, no note, nothing left. And the next thing you get the phone call the next day, or they're missing, and you go down there and there they are, and it's just begs belief that they have had the courage to go and do something like that and make that decision, not talk to someone.
Yeah, that's what I always think when you hear stories of the Greens and other people who take their lives, and you think, where do they get to that point? Because obviously they've got children or they've got family members, and obviously they're not in the mind frame to deal with all that, because obviously if you think about your children, your wife, why would I want to kill myself when I've got all these beautiful people? So in your mind, I still fathom as much as I battle and you battle each day, where do they get to that point? It's probably it's undescribable, because no one else knows but them. Burden
probably is one word that comes to mind. That there you've got Paul Green, two beautiful children.
Yeah.
He's just had a birthday the day before. Everything's going good, and mates from Sharks like Andrew Eddinghausen's had organised a boat trip with him that weekend to come up there and do a filming for ET's fishing show, and there was others that had all organised stuff with him, so there was nothing to indicate, and he's got this beautiful family. And the thing is, you're contemplating taking your own life, but you're going to cause so much damage to these people. But you're not thinking like that. No. And from what I can gather from some of the mates that have survived it, what I've talked to them about, and probably me personally, when you've had bad thoughts, it's probably you think you're a burden on everyone, and no one cares about you anymore, and I just don't want to be that burden anymore. I don't know what it is. I guess it's like you're in a different state of mind, because it's not you, it's not what you represent. You've got this other mind. I have three minds in my head, so I have to deal with. So what I do is there's a good bear over there, which is Glenn doing all the fun things and doing lots of stuff. Then I have the nightmares part that I've got to wake up every morning after having them, and then I've got this thing I call my place. And what I'm trying to do is when I have a little power nap, I'm back. Because I'm retired, I'm back doing athletics like it was professional. So I go back to sleep in the morning, but I won't even know it's coming. I'm not off in front of the TV while I'm supposed to be going out and doing stuff. I'll just fall asleep, but I'll try and think of what I was dreaming about when I did, and it's always good.
Yeah.
So after I go out and do a ride session with my mates at 6 o'clock in the morning, come back and make brekkie, turn the news on or whatever, or turn on Rush now and watch all the car resto shows. Yeah. And I sit there and I fall asleep. And then I wake up and go, shit, I'm in my other place there. What was that about? And I try to focus on that.
Okay, yeah.
And it takes, so there's things in there from good memories that come out. But the nightmare one, if I wake up after a good night's sleep and I've had the bad nightmares, I've been sleep deprived all night, I'm angry and grumpy and so on. And then there's the good one where we're doing the things with Rich Fogarty walking 150K and all that stuff, right? So
and that's
those three minds can arrive at any different time, and I have no control over it, but I try and focus on the good one. And then the other stuff just sort of falls into play, I guess.
Yeah. So mentally wise, as I say, what you deal with, and this gets back to, because the charity work that you mentioned gives you that sort of drive and purpose and everything else, and you've done some insane things, but then some incredible things as well. So some of the charity efforts you've done, obviously with McGrath Foundation, you're big on the McGrath Foundation.
Yep.
Our friend up in Newcastle, Mark Hughes Foundation,
Yep.
And the big three, Luke and the crew.
People.
Oh, mate.
Luke and Ella, mate, aren't they? Luke, for the listeners, Luke and Ella Alexander, two young, very young people, putting together a bunch of 45 either former washed-up sports stars or celebrities and whatever.
who
and
needs
a couple
some
of
motivation and goals.
Needs some motivation, and bring in a couple of young sports stars and show us all up. They do a wonderful job, this couple, and they give so much time, and they've raised probably millions now in all the years they've been doing it, and to do that, and they hold down full-time jobs.
100%. And
incredible.
Going back to that Sydney Newcastle when I first, that's how I sort of come across you.
Well, let me tell you the truth. I saw you over and I thought, I know that bloke's head. And then you come over and said hello. I smiled at you and you come over and I said, you said, I'm Rich Fogarty. And I went, you're Rich Fogarty, because I knew about you.
Okay.
I knew about you from your boxing and MMA fighting, because I used to follow it a fair bit.
Oh, okay, right.
And then, and it's a big story, and, you're very humble, especially with what you've been through, mate, how you grew up, and I know your story. And what you grew up with and all of that, and then to put it all behind you and deal with life now. This is now. That was then.
100%.
That's one of the best therapies, right? This is now, and that's then, and you've got to operate like that. To meet you was an absolute honour, and I'm like, wow, this is a guy that I idolise. It's Rich Fogarty.
Well, I see.
It was incredible.
I was just blasé because I was just trying to meet everyone in there, and as I say, like my own battles, I just do my own battles myself and just getting through them. But to come across like yourself and what you've done in your past, and then I start to go, wow, it's an honour to meet this dude. He's such humble. But not only that, is he insane from walking from Cronulla to Newcastle in motorbike gear.
Yeah, well.
You got the motorbike boots, you got the helmet, you got the full leather gear. And this is what I say when after it all finished and everyone, and I was telling the story about you with your motorbike gear, and I'm like, mate, this dude was walking. He was up in front of me. He had motorbike boots on, carrying a helmet. I'm struggling mentally and physically, and this guy's just up there like it's no problem at all. I'm like, I have to get past this. I have to get past this.
But it motivates you,
yeah, 100%. But I think when you're doing those sort of stuff. And you've done that a few times, Sydney to Canberra in a full motorbike gear.
That was running in it too, not walking.
Running in it,
We jogged in it. We jogged in the same kit.
But when you get to that, as you say, this is where it fascinates me, because you do this in the motorbike gear. You know the pain your body's going to go through because you've already been there mentally, and battling what you battle every day, as you say, in your mind. This is sort of am I correct in saying this is a bit of a release? Not so much a relief. I'm trying to find the words where it's sort of more of a fun thing to do to take your mind off everything else that's going, because you know what the pain you're going to go through with wearing that sort of gear and running from somewhere like Sydney to Canberra or walking from Sydney to Newcastle. Is it where you put those battles to the side a little bit and be happy just to deal with the pain because you're doing something else?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You've nailed it. It's look, people have asked me over many, many years, because we've done a lot of different things with endurance.
Yeah.
Endurance, and the whole the whole reason, the old story, and you've probably been subject to it, and a lot of sports people are. Look at the self-promoters, right? We're all out there self-promoting ourselves. Well, I can assure you that everything that we've done, and I know you've done, and a lot of my sports mates have never ever been paid for it.
Yeah.
We do it because we want to brand sell the charity.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
it's about getting that charity out there and awareness of what its key goals are.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're helping these people that are doing it way tougher than you and me, mate. You've been kicked in the head. I've been punched in the head.
Yeah.
I've completely broken down during sporting events. You've done the same with your knees. But what these charities represent.
Yeah.
Look at Ella, the Ellie Passimo, and Grace, and all those kids, and all those.
There was what really hit me hard and made me emotional with that charity, the Mark Hughes Foundation, was Sam Bates' story, and his sister, and losing their father, and because I've got two children, I'm thinking, wow, like. That really hit me when we're walking from Sydney to Newcastle, and I even said that, I think, to Sam when we finished, because I had my daughter there. I was like, just, knowing that you guys have lost your father and he will never walk you down the aisle, but he's never got that connection back with him because he's gone. Yeah. Like that was a story that really hit me.
Yeah, kids that lose their parents.
Yeah, especially like
at young ages.
Young girls.
They
18, 19, because I've got
on their life,
18 and 19. And I've always said, I've lived a pretty crazy life. So if I was to go, if God calls me whenever, so be it, I've lived a crazy life. The only really thing I would be sad about is not being able to see my children actually grow into adults.
Yep.
That would be probably, if I had to pick one sadness, that would be the sadness, not seeing my young man and my young daughter grow to be adults.
Yep.
If I do get that opportunity, so be it. But
you're blessed if you do.
100%.
Because there's so
100%.
much can take you away from that. Not only illness, but divorce, changing lifestyles, financial circumstances. So many things can impact on that situation.
But even the crew that
you're not getting there to do it. You know? So
even the crew that were walking with us, not so much Sam and his sister, but there was a couple there that actually had the brain cancer.
Yeah, there was Cass that had the brain cancer, and she just had the operation. Ellie, she'd lost her eyesight. It had come back, thank God.
That's right, yeah.
And
they were on the actual
tough,
3-day walk, and that's why I'm thinking,
that's hardcore. We're in our gear and whatever.
I should not be complaining, even though mentally I was going, man, this is a long way. My legs are killing me and everything else. But
next level, those people, mate.
100%. Like the level of mindset on Ellie and that was just...
They're full of life. They're happy.
I know,
they got the worst circumstances thrown at them.
Yep.
Thrown at them. Do you know, there's a bloke named Jay Allen. I don't know if you know Jay. No. Jay was on a show in Sydney called RPA. He had stage 4 melanoma, gone, truck driver.
Yep.
Got it from sunbeds. Same thing.
Really,
right?
yeah.
And he's now the ambassador for Melanoma Australia, and he's beaten cancer 3 times, I think it is. He's a mate of mine.
Yep.
And he had every possible card thrown at him as a young man with very young kids and newlywed and young kids. He was in a world of hurt. And anyway, he went on a campaign, got rid of all the sunbeds. That's a whole nother story. Yeah. And then he marches and he's walked all around Australia, right? He's next level, this guy. And then he got diagnosed with throat cancer last year. And again, I think it was stage 4, but he's beaten it again, right?
Wow.
This guy is next level. And he's always happy.
Yeah.
And I always, when I'm having a bad day, I think about Jay, and I think about Nathan, and I think about Ellie. They are just next level, Rich. Yeah. Totally next level. And how they can be so resilient is an inspiration to me. So when I'm having a bad day, I take myself there and say, you know what, you need an uppercut, mate. And these people have done so bad, yet they're not complaining. And did you notice that none of them complained?
No, none of them.
None of them were whinging. There's a few of us all having a little whinge about the little blister on the pinky.
I'll do me leg, me knee.
They never once. They never once. They were happy the whole time. Happy the whole time.
Yeah, no, that was an amazing experience on that Sydney to Newcastle, and to be honest, I was busted up after it, but I still wouldn't take it back. It was amazing, and again, some of the other New South Wales Police legacies, New South Wales Prostate Cancer MND, that some of the charities you've done. Just some amazing. I mean,
mate, it's endless. We could talk another whole podcast.
We could sit here for hours, which we should anyway. But
look, the charity work is about giving back.
Yeah.
I've had a very privileged life. Had good upbringing, good family life. I've lost a lot of people along the way through cancers and whatever. Yeah. But I've been very fortunate and privileged to live a rich life.
Yeah.
And it's still going, and I've got lifelong friends. We're all still having fun.
Yeah.
And it's important, but the best way to say thank you is give back to these charities. That's my take on it. And look, if I do something stupid to wear a trail bike outfit or dress up, whatever it is, look, the days are pretty much over for it, but I'll still do the charity work and we'll do the walks. One particular, you got to laugh, one person that was on that walk said, when we do the next one for the McGrath Foundation in January, can you not wear anything, just wear running shoes because my anxiety levels can't deal with that anymore, right? That's Tommy Burgess's wife, Talia, right? Talia Burgess. And anyway, she sent me a message having a bit of a laugh about that. And so it sort of brings home a bit, because I don't do it to stir anyone up. It's not a shot at anyone that you're weaker than me.
I honestly thought it was just a bit of a more, because you've been to the top levels of
Yep.
of your sport, your profession, everything else. So really to then challenge yourself and keep that motivation alive and that spark and fire alive is sometimes you go, well, I'm going to do, and I've done 2 80-kilometre runs just for the sake of give me something to do and
Yep.
give my brain something to actually do. That's how I sort of took it as go. Like he's walking in that because his mindset's here and everyone else's is here, but he wants his mindset and he wants a bit of motivation and a bit of a challenge to be here.
Yep.
And that's how I sort of took it. But as I said,
Two things it is. It's about up the ante to challenge myself.
Yeah.
Because I like a good challenge. That's why I took up triathlons. I could have gone to other sports a lot easier than that, but that's the ultimate challenges in those things.
Yep.
So it's, so doing things that are harder than normal, trying to just up the ante, and if I fail, so be it. But the other thing is it's to raise that awareness for the brand of the charity, right? So if we can do something that just pulls a little bit of media focus on this, then we're there for that, right? And I wanted to be really careful with the Mark Hughes Foundation because the focus is on those people that are suffering the illness, and we can't take away from that. But certainly lifting the group and motivating. You probably saw on this day 2 we marched in with old Crazy Rob doing the trumpet at the end and all that. It was just having a bit of fun and trying to lift it all. And so it's all about that. It's all about, the 100% is focused on getting that charity out there and giving what we can to that charity in any way possible, whether it's $1 or it's a phone call from a bloke like yourself to go and do a podcast to talk about a charity.
Every single thing helps, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What, so, when we're sort of going to that, what's the best advice you've got, whether it's sports people, police officers, whatever, for young people coming up these days, coming from, when we talk about the old bulls and the young bulls, what sort of advice would you have give to someone?
I always think back to when I was young because, we were all cocky and we all thought we knew everything. And then there'd be the old tradie or the old bloke or your father or your father's mate or your uncle. They'd give you a really good bit of advice or a kick up the backside for being too cocky.
That's right.
So the young people, please listen to experience.
Listen
to experience and investigate experience. Because history, there's nothing new at the moment. History's just repeating itself. But if you want to prepare for it, find out off grandpa and grandma what was going on 100 years ago 100%. Or 80 years ago, right? And you'll find out that what you're seeing now is actually happened before. But you better prepared for it.
100%.
That's listen to experience. That's probably, live life large. So make every moment count because you mightn't wake up tomorrow. That's really important. And if you've got hurdles put in front of you, just overcome them the best way you can. We talk about it before, Rich. There's a thing about you've got to try and be like a one of your idols, all that, and that's a misconception. If you want to be good at something, be better than that person. So if you want to be the best boxer in the country, be better than all of our boxers that have come through.
That's right.
If you want to be the best runner, you got to be, look at Ollie Hoare at the moment. You've got to be better than all before you. That's how you get the respect.
That's how progress.
It's good to model the ethics of these people. Like, all right, so let's pick one of the guy that's really, stands out in the world as a really, really cool guy. You'd look at, say, someone like Glenn McGrath. Ricky Ponting, those guys that have achieved, really good guys. But what they've done, what it's done.
That's right.
And Warnie, God love his soul. Warnie, one of the best blokes you'd ever meet.
100%.
I'll tell you a little story about him in a minute. But you don't want to be like Warnie. You want to be better than Warnie again, and achieve the more spin. And that's it. So that's my advice to young people. Obviously take a look at their book.
And what was probably your best advice you received?
Oh, it's always from Dad. That's no good, son.
If you don't score that try, I'm going to kick you in the bum when you get off. That was pretty much ours.
The great Mark Allen at Greg Welsh's wedding in 1993 is probably the best advice I ever got. And again, we come back to that 9:02 Ironman, 2 minutes. What have I got to do to get to 8 hours? And, we're trying to get into the professional ranks and at that stage. And I've got to go 8 hours. Anyway, I was over at Greg's wedding and I happened to be on Mark's table and I just said to Mark, God, I've got to ask you one question, man. We're not here to talk triathlon, but Mark, how do you do 8:06 in an Ironman? He says, get on the Kohler, Glenn. He's American, do the American accent. Best again. Get on the Kohler and I've got this other product. It's Ensure Plus. In your country, it's Exceed. supplement over here, and I have 2 cans of that, and and gave me a bit more advice on that. So, and cut your training down. That was Mark's advice.
Yeah,
so
really. Okay.
Really good advice. So I came back after that wedding, and 3 months later I went 850.
Wow.
And on the cola, he said, I didn't believe him about the cola because we use cola when you were gone.
Yeah, okay.
And he's saying, no, get on it before you're busted. It's flat cola. It's just sugar syrup. You could have sugar. Sugar cubes, whatever.
Yeah.
And what it does, your body's all out of carbohydrates and muscles are all depleted. So you're now running it on fuel, which is raw sugar, like the glucose at halftime tablet in footy. Anyway, so I said, I'm not real sure about that. He said, well, if you don't believe me, grab the next Triathlon American magazine and have a look at me. I'm covered in brown.
Wow.
So I went and had a look, and there I was. He was brown.
Yep.
Mark Allen was completely brown down the front of his singlet. And it was the year in 89 that he won. He finally beat Dave Scott after 7 goes at it, and he got on the collar and he ran away from him. You know, he just, when Dave faunted, he was still going. And so I came back and I got on the collar halfway on the bike, like Mark said, and I stayed on the collar as the sports drink, right? And the difference, I negative splitted the bike. I went faster in the second lap, and I ran better than I'd ever run before.
Wow.
And I was on less training. I was doing a heap of sailing with a late mate of mine, Andrew Short. So we were carrying a fair bit of upper body weight because of the grinding on these maxi yachts. This is another whole thing we were doing. We were on maxi yachts sailing around the country with a bunch of athletes to try and win big races.
Wow.
But that was it. So that was good advice, Mark Allen.
Valuable advice.
And now to the youngies, you know, they all went on to these nutritional programs and they're on the energy gels and all these different things, and they're good. Yeah. They're good and they all help. But I noticed that the first time that they went under 8 hours in Hawaii just recently, on the back of that particular athlete's bike, as he rode out of the bike area with 2 bottles of 600ml cola, flat colas in the bike, and you can see it as he rides out. Well, right, and then he comes back and smashes everyone and goes, because there wasn't much of an improvement in the time over there for the last 20 years. Allen's record never got broken, and it just hung on and hung on. They'll make a minute here and a minute there, but this guy comes on and gets on the collar and goes 20 minutes quicker than everybody and does 7 hours and 40 minutes.
So he's obviously got
Mark Allen might have got on
Mark's
him, maybe,
advice.
but it was hilarious. Here he is with all the modern technology, and those times, if we had stuck to that Mark Allen plan of nutrition, those times should have come down because of the bike technology increases, right? Because Mark was on the old heavy bike. These guys were on the light bike. They've gone from riding. Mark was riding about 430, 425, 430 to these guys are riding 410. So this is your 20 minutes. Wow. But they're not capitalising on it because they're falling apart in their run, right? So this guy, I think it's Bernard Langer, his name is. And Langer, he smashed it. Or Lionel Sanders it is. Sanders, and he was the one who was on the collar and he cracked the world record and everything. So,
wow.
Could be wrong. I haven't spoken to him about it, but I'm only making observations.
That cola, even though we're not sponsored by cola, but that's a good...
I didn't say the first word in front of it.
That's it. Just get on cola. So at the end before we finish up, and what's Glenn Gorick's rich life these days? Like what really, as you say, gives you purpose but makes you happy, and what is your rich life?
Well, I'm getting older, mate, 60, so the rich life is still being privileged enough to still do a triathlon at a decent level. And winning my age group still. But it makes it hard because there's some guys that are so competitive. As they get older, they come back into it. They're all retiring, so then they're getting the rest and recovery in place, because you go like I'm doing at the moment. But restoring an old car, you know, there's nothing better than fixing something that's broken. That I call that's a rich part of life. And there's a couple of mates I do that with. There's a guy up in Sydney named Craig O'Sullivan, another one, Bob Zalesko, and Bob was an army warrant officer, he's now a businessman, and he's got old Tiranas, and then Craig's the same, and they use the restoring of cars for their mental health, I can tell. So we're all mates, and we flew to New Zealand a couple of weeks ago, down to Perth, just buying cars and old bits and pieces and fixing up old cars. Doing a lot of the car racing again I was doing as a young man. We didn't touch on that, but back into the car racing on and off. And it's funny, we found a Tirana, XU1 Tirana up on a farm just next to the racetrack at Marilla, and I've restored that. It was dead and buried, full of rust, and it's now brand new. Wow! So to get it to that level, that stuff's good.
That's a bit, of
on the sidelines, being divorced. I watch my kids
Yeah,
from a sideline, you know, because it's a bit strange from all of that. But we keep a watchful eye on things where we can, and
100%.
they've turned out all right. As you said, you want them to turn out all right. You know, you worry because there's diversions in 14 through to probably 18.
Yeah.
You know, with 2 daughters. The distractions with males, drugs.
Yeah,
you know, you've got a bit more advice to young people.
Yeah.
Drugs is just no, and be tough and say no, because it'll ruin your life.
Yep.
And all you're doing is, when you purchase those illegal drugs, you're giving money that's tax-free to a person who does no contribution to society. They don't pay tax, they don't build a school, a road or a hospital, and it'll ruin you and your family's life forever. You've got to make informed decisions.
100%.
And if you do get hooked up in it, go get help and get out of it as quick as you can. Because it's a bloody mess, mate, you know.
Mate, well, it's been, as I say, we could sit here talking forever, and man, I'm enthralled with your life you've lived, and I just want to thank you again for coming on the Rich Life Projects, mate, and it's been an absolute honour to have you on the podcast, and man, thank you again.
Oh, thank you, mate. It's an absolute honour to be here, and I know your background and what you do, and just touching on that to me is also something that I admire. You know, I watch what you've done and where you are, and it's fantastic. And the Rich Life Project, like, what a great thing, you know. Hoppo, he's got you covered, mate.
Oh, mate, Hoppo, he's a great man, old Hoppo.
He's got, you know, life's a beach, and it can be a bitch.
That was great.
He's doing some good ones as well. But
100%.
These sorts of things are the key to looking after your mates, and getting the word out there and hearing life experiences. Thank you, mate. Absolutely humbled and honoured to be here.
Pleasure, mate. Pleasure. It's great times, and we got golf tomorrow, so good weekend coming up.
All right, what's your handicap?
Myself.
I was going to say the same.